Welcome to the art and science of difficult conversations. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lucie, and we love having difficult conversations.
That's right. And each week we'll either share a tip, hear how others have gotten better at difficult conversations, or demonstrate common difficult conversations and what to do and what not to do.
Let's get into it.
Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome back to our next episode of the art and science of difficult conversations. I am here with my co-host, Lucie. Lucie, how are you today?
I'm good, Chris. Thank you. How are you doing today?
So far, so good. Here in Boston, the weather is finally not humid. It's still warm, but it's okay without the humidity. It's bearable. You can go outside and do things. You can live life, enjoy the sun. So much better.
Nice. Yeah, I was just recently traveling to the East Coast from the West Coast, and that was one of the things that surprised me how humid it was. And I was missing the dry heat in California.
Yeah, it's miserable. Yeah, it's miserable. But for those of you tuning in, we have this podcast where we talk about difficult conversations, about how to have them better, because we really believe when we communicate better, we live better. And I was just having this conversation with somebody because I'm doing a workshop for them in a couple of weeks on difficult conversations and conflict resolution. And one of the participants is conflict avoidant, but she agrees, and she knows that in her heart of hearts that having difficult conversations leads to better outcomes, and everybody will be happier if they can just do this. But she's just worried about having them. She just doesn't like having them, and a lot of other people are also not having them and that's why I'm going in.
Yeah, it is difficult. That's why they are difficult, because it's not easy to get into them. And we are hoping that through our conversations, we'll make it a little bit easier for you.
Yeah. And so today, that's why one of the things we wanted to bring up today was a scenario of what do you do when somebody goes on tangents in hard conversations? Because what makes it hard is, number one, you have to bring it up, but also when people are thinking about it and getting anxious about bringing up a topic, they're worried about the other person going on a tangent or talking about something else or going on a rant about something. And so how do I manage that? How do I deal with it? Like, how do I get them back on track in a way that's respectful, but at least I just need to get things done? And so for you, Lucie, what are your go-to tips? What do people need to do to keep people from going on tangents?
That's a great question, Chris. And I would say, first, take time to prepare for the conversation. Just like we are usually saying, we need to take some time and really think about what is our intention for the conversation. What also have an empathy for the other, kind of put ourselves in their shoes. So understand if we know that one of the challenges that could happen, the person goes off tangent. What is their reason? Is it maybe because they are uncomfortable really about talking the topic? Or is there a kind of defense strategy? And also prepare ourselves mentally and emotionally. If the other person does that, what is my strategy? What can I do? I would say, first of all, staying calm, not allowing ourselves to get triggered. You do this all the time. That wouldn't help probably in the difficult conversation. So that's one, our own emotional regulation, preparing ourselves emotionally. If this person does that again, going off tangent, how do I keep myself calm? I will pause here. What would be something you would add? Maybe we can gradually build.
Yeah. Well, I'll echo everything. I think preparation is knowing what the goal is can help you stay on track in the first place. I worked with one manager who struggled with difficult conversations, and we got her to the point where she was able to just write down the goal of the conversation. And just that one thing, just writing down the goal of, I need to give you this specific feedback, or I need to do this specific thing. She said it helped her so much, like beyond every other technique we ever talked about. That was the one technique that helped her stay focused on, this is what we are talking about. And we can talk about like in the moment what you're going to say, but just that preparation of knowing what you're going to do is so key to keeping things on track.
I love what you shared. And it sounds like that can help also part of the preparation. And it sounds like it could also help mentally and emotionally. If we even have that piece of paper and have the main points, not just maybe the goal, but for some people, it's even helpful to list all the kind of bullet points they want to address. And even bring that piece of paper with them to that meeting and saying, sometimes I'm nervous. I don't want to forget. This is really important for me to share this. And so when somebody starts going off tangent, it could be even bringing that focus. I hear you, depending on the specific situation. Let's say I hear you. How about we park this for, let's talk about it in the next meeting. For this meeting, I really would like to cover these points. Would that be okay? We can even schedule, or we leave it at the end of this meeting if we have extra time. If not, we'll schedule another time to talk about this topic deeper. So that could be one of the strategies, how we can stay focused and keep kind of the boundary or the container of that particular conversation.
Yep. You know what else I always tell people is, even at the beginning of the conversation, to keep people on track, the very first thing you should do is get them to agree what the conversation is about. Tell them what the conversation is about. Have them agree, we are talking about this today. We're talking about this feedback. And, it's one of those things where you're just getting their buy-in, like, okay, we agree. This is the frame of what we're talking about. We're talking about this feedback if it's a work situation. And it's not going to 100% prevent them from going on a tangent. But later, when they do go on a tangent, if they go on a tangent, it gives you something to say and pull back to and say, hey, listen, earlier we agreed we were going to talk about this, and I appreciate you bringing that up. But right now, let's focus on this.
I love how you're mentioning kind of having that agreement, the consensus, getting everybody on the same page. And that could be even not just before at the beginning, but I'm thinking of another. Let's say somebody brings up, or during that conversation and discussion, let's say you discover a new challenge that the people didn't see before. And now there's a choice. Do we continue working on the agenda that we originally had, but here is this other problem? Sometimes it can happen that we decide, what, it actually doesn't make sense to even progress on these points unless we really resolve this bigger challenge. So it could happen that in the middle of the conversation, if that makes sense, and it still is helping the ultimate purpose of the conversation, helping the project, helping resolve the problem, let's say, then it might be helpful to, okay, so now we are at a point, we need to decide, do we continue in our agenda or do we actually focus on this one? And get that agreement sometimes even in the middle of the meeting.
Yeah.
What's coming up for you as you
how do you decide that criteria? How do you, like, when you're talking to people, how do you decide whether you want to continue exploring this tangent or whether you say, no, we need to stay focused on this original agenda topic?
That's a great question. An example, so I do that a lot in coaching sessions with leaders and, let's say, leading workshops or leading conversations. It could be a comparable, what's coming up for me, a situation. Let's say I had a training. I had an agenda. We had to, everybody was supposed to do their working on their task. Now, what I've noticed, because there was something happening politically dramatic at the same time, and everybody was a little bit distracted, let's say, and some people were emotionally charged and afraid. For me, I had a decision to make because I've noticed that they're not in the headspace to be able to focus on the agenda. So I made a decision, and got their buy-in and seeing, you guys, it seems there's some distraction. Would that be helpful to pause here for a moment, get that cleared out first, and then refocus once we address, let's say, put 15 minutes talking about what's happening right now, then get it out of the way, and then we can focus.
Yep.
So that was a little bit of a detour, yet creating that space to clear that space so people can actually go back and focus rather than being just half brain thinking about something else. So in that situation, that could be helpful if, let's say, something happened in the company. let's say there was a layoffs and the leader pretends everything is as usual and tries to stick with the agenda when people are emotionally triggered. That might not work to actually stay focused. So I think I'm myself getting on the tangent of how actually what are the exceptions when we can steer off a little bit. But in a way, not steer off completely, but actually make it more efficient. So if we notice that people are triggered, something happened right before the meeting, clear it out first, take 5 minutes, let's say, to really discuss that, close it out so that people can start and really be present during the meeting and the following discussion, if that makes sense. What's coming up for you?
Yeah, I like that. I think that's absolutely what we talk about a lot in this in the work we do, right? Is in this podcast is how do you create a dialogue? How do you create that open conversation as opposed to you going in to shut things down? And there's some like, I say, bring it back to the what you agreed on at the beginning. And there's a softer way I also tell people is you could always say, listen, I know earlier we agreed to talk about this feedback, and now you're talking about this. I get there's a possibility I may be missing something. Can you help me understand the link between these two? And that's a softer way of doing it. And
Yeah.
I've done that before, and it's helpful for me to it does two things. One is if there isn't a link, it's kind of like a gentle nudge to them without actively calling them out that like, hey,
Well
we're
done.
not talking about this.
Yeah.
But also, what's more frequent is they somehow describe how it relates to what we're talking about, and I say, okay, that makes sense. You're helping flesh things out. Let's bring it in and make sure we're still talking about this main topic, though. So usually when they bring that up, it helps me at least get more context. But there have been times where I bring it up and they realize, oh, actually, we could talk about that later.
Makes sense. And I also like about the approach that you're not dismissing it. Don't talk about it as now. Let's focus here. But you're actually looking at actively listening, being present with them. So and inquiring, is there a connection? What is the connection? Help me understand. And so they can feel heard and have peace within themselves. Okay, Chris is listening. Okay, actually this is sorry, I'm getting off tangent here. Let's refocus back.
Yep. For you, Lucie, what's the now let's I also want to bring up what would be the most direct way you would interrupt somebody that you would recommend people interrupt somebody that's on this kind of tangent and this train of thought that doesn't seem to stop, and they're not really giving you a ton of space to jump in and ask any of these questions. How would you kind of jump in?
Great question. So there are two situations. If that's somebody that I already know, they have the tendency to do that, then I make that agreement at the beginning before we start, kind of in private. Really, do I have your, let's say in session, or do I have your permission? I really want to stay on the point here. We have limited time. Would that be okay? Anytime we get off a topic, I kind of bring us back. And so then in the meeting, it's not coming as a surprise. I even had an agreement with somebody. I just lift a hand and they kind of pause in the past. So it could be gestures. Let's say if you are in person, sometimes we just lift, or some people, they even hear I take a breath and they already know to pause. Frankly, I breathe very loudly or they're very in tune to my facial expressions. So even that, or just raising a hand or saying, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. And can we just bring this back? And according to the agreement that we made at the beginning, kind of let's stay focused, let me write this down, or let's put this down as the next point to discuss it later. So I still make sure to address that, but let's really get back as we agreed at the beginning. Any
I
other
love that.
strategy?
I think setting those ground rules. I think setting those ground rules is helpful, and it's just helpful to set that stage of like we're all going to be playing by the same rules in some capacity.
I found it very helpful and haven't had anybody respond negatively once we set the ground rules. And once they have the buy-in. Of course, there could be situations when there's a new person, right? This makes it a little bit more complicated.
Hmm.
In the meetings, let's say, and we are just participants, not the leader or the facilitator of the meeting.
Yeah.
And let's
What
say
if it's
I
a
had
one-on-one setting? I think these are good examples for a group setting. What if it's a one-on-one?
yes.
How would you kind of interrupt somebody's flow?
So I've had those conversation even one-on-one. If that was somebody that I've noticed, we are getting off tangents in our meetings, then we had the conversation about let's stay on track.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
then I had the gestures also in one-on-ones. Um, if it's somebody I don't know, then let's say depends on the intention why we are meeting. I feel I always am already trained myself to set the container at the beginning. So we are meeting, what we want to talk about, how much time we have. So it's very hard for me if I haven't done that. What would it look like if somebody talks a lot or starts detouring? I would say, and at any point when I either, again, if they are really unstoppable, then I usually really lift a hand, or if they don't respond to that, I'm so sorry to interrupt. Um, I just wanted to bring us back. I really would love to hear this. And considering that we have only limited time today, would that be okay if we refocus here and then we can set some time? And let's connect after we take care of the agenda that we really have to take care of. I would love to hear the rest of the story.
Hmm.
Or let's connect another time to really finish talking about this.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are some of your strategies that you're using?
Well, I agree in group setting. I think that's absolutely the what I would suggest as well. What I've done is just set ground rules. I've been fortunate. I haven't had to do that ahead of time with anybody in the session that's talked a lot. Now, I would, if it did become a problem, I would do the exact same approach. I would talk to them ahead of time, like, hey, listen, I appreciate all your input. Here's the reality is that it's also making our meetings longer or where it's making it us difficult to get to the other things. I want to hear your input. Is there a way we can still hear your input and still make sure we get to the rest of the stuff in the meeting? Or make space for other people if that's the issue, like depending on the issue.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Fortunately, like my first course of action always though is let's do it as a group.
Mm-hmm.
Let's agree. What are the ground rules of we have to use as a group to make sure we figure out how do we all work together? The goal isn't to call anybody specifically out, but I'm trying to role model for them. Like, let's all work together. We're all trying to fix a problem, not just one person is a problem.
Yes. Yeah.
And I would say usually that works. I don't know if I've ever had a time where it hasn't worked to stem behavior like that.
Mm-hmm.
If it's one-on-one, if somebody's really going on a tangent and they just keep going and they're not giving me space to jump in, I'll just interrupt and I'll say, hey, Lucie, thank you for your input. And I appreciate what you're saying. I just would like to also make sure we talk about this other thing. And so I think it's important. I look them in the eye, I say their name. I say, hey, Lucie.
Nice. That's a good one. Yes.
I think that's a very jarring thing for people when they just hear their name directly in a one-on-one situation. It just gets your attention right away. So it's really about getting attention and not like, yeah, if they give you a breath, then yes, you can jump in when they stop. But if they're not, you have to interrupt.
Catch the attention.
And it's tough for people if they are concerned, if they're very conflict avoidant, they don't want to, step in. It's very difficult to get used to that. So it's just practice, just getting used to that practice of saying, hey, Lucie.
And it can be uncomfortable at the beginning. That's for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. When we can't do this to other adults, or other kids, but sometimes when my kids are talking too much, I'll just like grab them by the shoulder and say, okay, let's stop and chill out.
Yeah, probably not to other adults. No.
Can't do that to other adults, unfortunately. So is there anything that you would say don't do? Is there anything that you're like, definitely don't do this?
Well, I would say the first one, a very clear one. Of course, we don't want to get angry and name call them, or I think that would be the biggest no-nos. Or
Yeah,
you always do this. I cannot believe
always.
you never let me speak when I want to share. Or you always start talking about something else when I want to. So already that brings that angry energy. And I understand if that happens repeatedly, um, that it might be difficult to self-regulate. And at the same
Hmm.
time, that's why it's important to really prepare for that conversation. And even if that happens repeatedly, have a conversation actually about that and set the ground
Mm,
rules.
yeah. Yeah, I like
Um,
that. Always or never, staying away from those. Um, and the only thing I'll add is what when talking about interruptions, like I said to interrupt, right? Say, hey, Lucy.
yeah.
I always also say, take stock of what you're feeling before you interrupt. Because if you're interrupting out of anger and frustration, then that's a different story. You need to think about why you're feeling angry and frustrated first before you interrupt. When you interrupt, it should be coming from a place of being calm, being in control, and you're responding and you're trying to get control of a dialogue, of a flow in some way. But if you are frustrated, if you're angry, if you're anxious about something, you can still interrupt. And I would say, instead of continuing the conversation, suggest that you take a break. Say, hey, listen, is it okay if we take a break? Lucy, I just need to take a 5 minute break. Is that okay?
I love the strategy. Which so what I'm hearing, the don't, not just the never ever always, uh, but also really checking in with what is our energy there. And if we
Mhm.
are angry and we cannot say that without really an intense or those never ever always, then it's better to take a break.
Yeah,
So that's
I think
additional
so.
what to do instead rather than being angry and communicating out of anger
Yeah,
or
that's what I think, at
impatience.
least. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great strategy. I've always, I've also did get stuck in my head. The always never. I also had the times when we took a break, when in some business settings, when I was working with my previous business partner, and we had some emotionally triggering conversations, um, and we noticed, you know what, I'm getting triggered. Let's take a break for 5-10 minutes, and let's come back and talk about this from a different little space.
Yeah.
Let's do
Yeah.
a little reset, and that was actually very helpful.
Yeah. Love that. So, any other tips you want to share?
Any other tips? We touched on it, maybe not specifically on the active listening. Um,
Hmm.
to come there, not only don't what not to do, don't be angry, what to do instead, being engaged in that conversation. And
Hmm.
so we do want to share our message, but also really hearing what is coming up for the other one. Why are they interrupting, or bringing up the other thing? So
Yeah.
also being mindful and acknowledging that. Sometimes we also want to push it away. Let me just talk. I want to talk about this, which is a little bit the frustrated energy, but also looking at how can we validate the other person's perspective, if that's completely different perspective or a
Hmm.
different tangent.
Yeah.
And I think you did a great job of actually appreciating at the beginning. Thank you for what you're sharing here, and let's refocus here,
Yep.
and bring it the name. So maybe being actively still listening, even not just sharing, focus on what we want to say, but also listening, um, for the information and also for their intention, possibly. I don't
Hmm.
know if that's too complicated. What does it make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think we always hammer it, especially when we talk about resistance or pushback, is trying to understand, right? that them going on tangents is serving a purpose of some sort for them,
Yes.
right? So it's helpful to understand, or at least try to assess what may be happening, and then you can test it out and you can ask about it, and maybe you're wrong, but at least you'll get more information as you keep testing and asking and being curious, right?
Because sometimes when we get the pushback, or somebody goes off tangents, we tend to close off. We don't want to be still curious.
Right.
So seeing if you can get into that curiosity state and stay there a little bit longer.
Yep. Love it.
So it's part of self-regulation and noticing what the other person is seeing, feeling, saying.
So I'm wondering, I think it's worth us demonstrating what that could look like. And I guess it doesn't have to be super involved because it's very straightforward how we'll respond. But I think it would be helpful if we just did a professional situation and a personal situation. That way you can see it still works even if you're talking to a friend or a family member about that stuff.
Sounds good.
Right.
Hey, Chris here. I really appreciate you listening to this podcast. And if you are listening to this podcast because you're looking to get better at these difficult conversations, well, if you really want to de-escalate difficult behaviors and you want to be assertive without being aggressive and being true to yourself, I have a self-paced course that can really help you, because I know it's difficult being assertive in lots of different situations. If you're at work and you have to give feedback, if you have to deliver bad news to an employee, or deliver bad news to somebody that you care about in your personal life, or you're struggling to deal with defensive or sensitive people who are pushing your buttons and you don't know how to push back. It doesn't have to be that way. There is a world where you can handle these tough emotions with confidence. You can speak honestly and kindly while you're still being assertive. And you have the ability to manage emotional outbursts and stubbornness calmly, because these are things that I've had to overcome and learn. And so this self-paced course goes through all of those things. I've created this trust framework that helps you think through how to prepare for and how to facilitate hard conversations. And you hear a lot of it actually in this podcast as I talk about how to handle difficult conversations in lots of different scenarios. Currently, the course is closed for enrollment. There's a waiting list. If you are interested in learning more, enrollment will open up at the end of August and the beginning of September. So please go to the website. I'll link it down below, and you can learn more about it and join the waiting list if you want to hear more about it. But I'd love to see you there.
So let's do a work situation first, if that's okay.
Okay.
And I'll be the manager. So in this situation, I'll be the manager. Lucie, you are my employee. And
Alrighty.
in this situation, I'm talking to you. I'm trying to give you some critical feedback because you've been coming in late multiple times over the past couple of weeks. And I need to give you this warning or give you this feedback before it becomes even worse.
Yes.
And you'll try your best to navigate away from it.
Take us somewhere else.
Yeah, take us somewhere else. All right, let's jump into it. Hey, Lucie, how are you this morning?
I'm good, Chris. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Listen, I know it's may seem a little out of the blue. I need to give you some feedback if that's okay.
Sure. I don't have much time because I'm running a little bit late. But
Perfectly fine.
Could we do it a little bit later, because I have so much on my plate. Oh my God, there's like from admin, they're chasing me with so much emails.
Yeah, I get it. So
I've been
listen,
back from vacation.
I'm happy to,
and I'm so
Lucie,
overwhelmed.
yeah, I get it. I'm happy to at least tell you what it's about so that you can be prepared for later, if that's okay.
Yeah, okay. Or do you want to send me email?
Let me just tell you that way. I don't want it to be
sure,
misinterpreted.
Chris. Okay, yes, of course,
okay.
Chris. Yes. Okay.
So Lucie, I just wanted to tell you that I've noticed over the past few weeks you've been coming in late 5 times over the past couple of weeks, and I didn't say anything at first because I understand there's things that come up. So it's just becoming more of a pattern, and it's impacting the rest of the team. So I just want to talk about that with you later, if that's cool.
Yeah, I guess we can talk about it later. You know that I've been busy. I'm back from vacation, and I have so many things going on also with my family, so I hardly get any sleep, and sometimes
Yeah.
mornings get crazy, and traffic in LA is just horrible.
Yeah. Yeah. Listen, traffic
It's just
everywhere is terrible. I don't know anywhere that traffic is fun. So looked at your calendar earlier. I know that you have 3 o'clock today easy, or sorry, there's nothing at 3 o'clock later today. I'm gonna put something in your calendar. Let's meet then if that's cool.
I already wanted to take care of the emails, but if you think that I should put the work on hold and just we can have the conversation, you make the call if you want me to reprioritize and have that rather than me doing the work.
That's a good question. You know what? Let's do that. I'd rather talk to you about it today, and then that's okay because then we'll just move our 1-to-1 that was scheduled for later in the week, and we'll just do it later today. So you'll
Okay,
still get back that time later.
I see. Okay, so we don't have to do the one-on-one later.
Yeah.
That would be helpful if I don't have to have that meeting because I have really
Yeah.
so much on my plate.
Understandable. Let's make it happen. All right. Thanks,
Chris.
Lucy.
Thanks, Chris.
You started to go right into the tangents. Thank you.
I tried.
Yeah, you tried.
But you also were trying to pull me back, and you got me to commit to not escape from that meeting.
Yeah.
Even though I tried to overwhelm you with so much of my overwhelm.
Yeah. So tell me about what are the techniques that I pulled through that seemed effective from your perspective.
You were firm. You didn't let yourself to be swept in my overwhelm, and you stayed firm, grounded, and you said my name. And actually you pick something specific action. So first kind of I just wanna, you took it step by step. So first it was, I just want to give you feedback, and I try to move away from that. So then you just told me, kind of, you took it step back, just minimum. I'll just tell you what is that about. So for me, okay, that was harder to wiggle out of that one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so you went for it, you shared that. And then I tried to escape from that. And then you brought it back again. You basically stayed focused and kept bringing me back. Didn't respond. Yes, you affirmed, yes, the traffic, this is also back, but you didn't let that distract you from the focus. And you actually suggested one specific time meeting with me. So you, from my perspective, you kept being stable, stayed focused on one specific outcome of that small conversation rather than letting me escape completely.
Mm-hmm.
How was it for you from your perspective?
Yeah, I was not expecting to have to say your name right away. But you kept going, and I was like, I gotta reel this back in. I gotta get you back into this conversation. I think this is what we talked about earlier, is having a goal for the conversation makes it so much easier to stay focused on what the conversation needs, what needs to happen in the conversation. So I need to give you feedback. And it's not like mission critical, like I need to give you feedback in the next 5 minutes or something bad will happen, right? This is something that can wait like maybe a couple of hours.
Yeah.
So in my mind, I've already decided, okay, we don't need to give the feedback right this minute, but I do need to give it to you today or tomorrow. And so all I need to make sure is I want to make sure you at least know what it's about, because number one, I don't want you to be like anxious all day and like, worried about what's going to happen. So I want to just tell you what's happening right away. And, when it comes to hearing all those things, I don't know if other people will agree with me, but my philosophy is I just don't care. I don't care. And not in a way that like I don't believe you and I think it's nonsense. It's more as in it doesn't affect my life. I don't need to care I don't care whether it's a valid excuse or not. If I just have to accept this is your reality. Good enough. I just need you to get back into this conversation. All the other stuff is fine. That's your life. Traffic. Yes, I agree. Traffic stuff. And we still need to talk about this thing.
Yes.
So in a way, like I kind of don't care about all those other things.
I think that creates, I would say, you created that boundary. Yes, something is happening, and I still need to get this done. Let's refocus. And when I reflected, I think for me, naturally, that might be more difficult. Also because I'm being a coach. So, the empathy for the other, I want to hear them out. So for me, it might be really more difficult to keep that. So for me, I would have to really prepare myself. Yes, they'll probably give me all the things and also bring them back. Validate, yes, I hear this is a difficult time right now. And let's have a conversation at least for 10 minutes today at this time. How about that? Just like you did, kind of really acknowledge that. And that was beautiful that you created that separation, that you didn't get sucked in my drama in a way. That I was creating the
right, because that's, you could get into that and then you're like stuck in trying to problem solve these random things that aren't really your problem to solve.
Exactly. Yes. That could be the slippery slope for somebody who is empathetic leader. And I have, clients telling me, Lucie, the employee, when I try to give them feedback, they start crying. And so being able to stay calm, even in the face of the employee crying, and how to navigate that could be a tricky situation. So again, it comes back to our own emotional regulation, being prepared. And if they start to cry, hear them out, seems like this is emotional for you. I'll let you, kind of staying there till usually people calm down. If we don't try to fix it right away, and then when they're able to speak again, okay, let's get back to that topic.
Yeah. And I think it's important. I didn't make a big deal out of this in the middle of the conversation, obviously, but it's important to note the role of being flexible as I'm doing all of this, right? Like I wanted to give you the feedback now, you can't because you're doing this stuff, right? Again, I don't care, but I still do need to get this done. So like, I'm willing to flex it. Like I don't care why it needs to flex. I'll just flex it. And later on, you're worried about this, getting your other work done. Okay, I'll be flexible and move some other stuff around to make sure you're still getting your work done, because I still need you to get your work done at the end of the day.
I think that was a great move. So you created, that boundary. Yes, it needs to get done, but it was also, there was a door. It wasn't like a wall. No, I don't care at all what's going on for you. This is what needs to happen. And that would be another extreme, right? No, actually, you stayed firm and assertive in what you needed, but also were flexible, as you mentioned. So I felt on the receiving end there was less resistance because, yes, I tried to wiggle out of it because I have a lot to work on, but you acknowledged that and gave me, okay, more time. We don't have to have the other meeting.
Yeah.
So that increased my buy-in. Okay, if we have the meeting now, then I have more time later to do what I need to do.
Yeah. And if we had a lot of time, I could have explored like, well, what's the importance of having those emails done later that you can't meet about this, and really trying to explore, see if there's other underlying resistance. But if you're in a rush, and I'll accept that, I'll just accept you're in a rush, you have to do things, that's fine. So let's just make these quick concessions to see if that's what's going on. It's a way for me to test, like, is that really, and I could see like in the middle of the role play, you're trying to like, what other excuse can I throw up there? Right. And that'll happen. Sometimes people will have like other reasons why they can't. Like, oh no, but I really need to do this. So there is a little bit of a dance, and if you don't have time to, go into a long discussion and explore and be curious, it's okay to throw out these things but it's really more to be a test. It's not meant to be, I'm going to solve the problem here. Ultimately, it's more like, I just want to test if that's actually the reason you're pushing back.
Yes, makes sense. And I really like that you didn't try to do the whole thing, the whole conversation right there, but really just got one step further and ended with a specific action. With some people that are, let's say, as you started our conversation today with the client that has more avoiding tendencies. So for the manager that doesn't want to create the conflict, it's already difficult for them to start the conversation. And then when they get a pushback from that, then they're like, you know what? Okay, let's talk about it later. So really staying focused, just like you did. Well done.
Yeah. So let's jump into our second role play of a personal situation. Let's just say we're a family. Let's say we're brother and sister, and I'm just going to use a real scenario for my life. Let's say our mom is moving and we have to help her move a bunch of stuff. And we have to do like all these utilities, all the things you have to do when you move, to move utilities, all the moving stuff. And let's say that you have been taking the lead on a lot of this stuff, but you needed me to do a bunch of the like utilities, call utility companies and all these other logistics things. And so, but I haven't done them yet. So now you need me to like do this because our mom's going to be moving next week.
So by next week, we need to get it done.
Yeah, but I haven't yet.
Even
though I said I would. So, and now you're trying to like say, you're just trying to talk to me about like, let's make this happen.
Okay. Hey, Chris, how are you doing?
Good. What's up?
I have a quick question, and actually, I want to check in with you. You know how we talked, our mom is moving, and I was supposed to take care of the other thing and the boxes and the movers, and so that's happening. And I'm also very busy with kids and all the other things happening. So I wanted to check in what's the status on getting the utility bills transferred. Where is it at?
Oh man, Lucie, you would have no idea how difficult it is. I tried doing that last week when we last talked. I tried doing that, but then I got a call from my buddy Carm, and he was in trouble, and so like I had to go down and help him out with something real fast, and that took like
Chris.
all night. That and then we were just like I had to pick him up from the police station.
Wow,
so I had to go pick him up, and it was just wild. I know.
Chris, I know you're such a caring person, and I really appreciate that about you. You really want to care for everybody else, and I really want us pay attention here too, because our mom, we have a timeline. What would need to happen so that we get it done by,
I know, Lucie,
I think in 2 days.
Lucie, I know we have a timeline. You don't got to tell me about that timeline. I know this, but man, that really threw off my entire week.
I get it.
Police station, having to bail them out.
Sounds like an adventure right there. By when could you do it? What about do you have any questions about it? No, unfortunately not. So I need to also run in 5 minutes. So what would be it needs to be done by the end of the week. So by Friday at 3 p.m. the latest, ideally tomorrow.
I guess I'll call them after this. That's fine.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. So how about we have a quick check-in on Friday morning, just to make sure that we have everything covered and we have still a little room in case we need to take care of anything else. Sounds good?
Okay, boss. Okay.
Chris, you're the best. Thanks so much.
See ya. I'll take care of it.
Thank you. So.
Thanks for keeping me on track, Lucie.
Thank you for committing to getting it done. You're such a caring son.
Yes. I'm just a caring person.
You are. But I see that how you wanted to get kind of shift the focus on other things.
Yeah. You know what? Number one, I saw that you said my name right away to get me. And then I tried using it on you.
Yes.
But what I really loved was you said, I got 5 minutes. Can we get this? Like, what are we going to do about this? Right. I think it's similar to when we role played that manager. I think in this kind of situation, when somebody's on a tangent, there's a degree of, yes, you can still care about the other person and be empathic about like their life situation and
Yeah.
all the context. There's also a degree of I don't care, right? Like all those things are in the past. We need to do this other thing right now.
Yes.
This is the task, is we need to call, or we need to go to this meeting, or we need to be at work. And so that's the real issue, is not this other stuff that we're trying to figure out. It's what is happening right here.
True, true. Like refocus us for the future. This is, we have just 5 minutes. Let's refocus what
Yeah,
matters the most and what can we do rather than what is in the past.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So I think you did a great job. You tried to, so I think it's interesting. You did the acknowledgement and the empathy and the reflective response.
I cannot
Very
help
nice of you.
myself.
Um, I'd be interested it'd be interesting to hear from people watching or listening. What is their relationship with their sibling? Would they be so empathic, or would they say, listen, dude, you got to just do this?
With my sisters, I think it's so ingrained in me, that strategy, that it's, but real life experience, I don't know if I'm getting here on tangent, but it's still within the topic.
Yeah.
There was a friend that was kind of more of an acquaintance, part of the community that I'm part of. And he has been talking people's ear off, usually. That's when he calls, usually it's for an hour and most of them talking. He just has the need to speak. And so when I had time, I was there to support as a friend in the past. Now, we were together at one place when I really needed to focus. I couldn't speak. And I gave him some heads up. This day today, when you see me, I really need to be focused, talk to other people, or just have some time to myself to recharge. And so I try to share, these are my needs, these are my boundaries. And he wouldn't actually, it was so hard for him to respect that when I said, remember how I talked about this, I need some space, I cannot talk to you right now. He kept, let me just say one more thing. So at one point, I actually had to get up and leave. And that made him upset. Because he really was in that mode. So for me, that was my limit. If you cannot respect my boundaries when I need that, that also means we cannot be, really close friends. So for some listeners, if they have somebody in their life, it could be a relative. It could be maybe a friend from the past that continuously maybe was disrespecting the boundary. Maybe sometimes it is really also the time to separate and say no to those meetings with those people, if they really continuously disrespect the boundary that you set. So that could be like an extreme maybe example, but hopefully helpful to some of the listeners that are dealing with people like that don't hear the boundary, don't respect the boundary.
Yeah, I think that's a great example, because there's lots of times when people listen to us or talk to us, and I think my experience is they often get surprised when I say, if eventually one of the interventions at a workplace is, well, you're just gonna have to go to HR. You're just gonna have to do a warning. You're gonna have to put them on a performance improvement plan.
Yep.
And they get confused. They're like, isn't there like some kind of like verbal technique that can help get, like, if you tried everything, then that's it. Like, there's some limit to all this stuff.
Yep.
Like your boundaries in personal relations, like there's a boundary. Like you're gonna have to either end it at some point if need be, or we can try our best. All of these techniques are about how do we control ourselves and manage the best way possible. But sometimes you just have to get up. Sometimes you just have to, file a warning, start the progressive discipline process. That's just part of it.
So hopefully it doesn't get to those situations, but also be prepared in case you continuously do your best and you give them feedback and set the boundary, and it keeps being disrespected, then there's the next step to really protect yourself in the personal situations and also in the work situations at the same time, to really get
Right.
HR involved.
Yep, exactly. So,
Darn it,
Lucie,
we finish on this note.
I know. Well, Lucie, why don't we do your takeaways? What are your big takeaways from today?
Big takeaways. The power of calling somebody's name and sharing that, how that can bring the attention. So that's one of my takeaways, really how important that is. And to remember somebody's name also if you meet somebody at the networking event.
Yeah.
It could be extra motivation. What would be your takeaway?
Saying somebody's name. I like the idea of being really prepared and centered, and thinking ahead of time what you're going to do. As you mentioned earlier on, have a plan for what you're going to say or do when they do, if and or when they do go off a tangent. Do you need to meet with them ahead of time if it's a group session or a meeting? Or do you just need to, in the beginning, set ground rules around that? Whether it's of a nonverbal cue to tell them to, hey, you're talking too much, right? Or just a verbal cue. And I think that's setting those boundaries and being willing to follow those boundaries. So when you set those boundaries, somebody crosses it over and over again, being willing to also take it to the next level of whatever that is, whether it's walking away or involving HR or taking it to the next step, whatever it may be, right? But being willing to maintain that boundary.
And I would add to that, taking a pause when we notice that we are really getting emotionally triggered. Even when we prepared to the maximum, it's still powerful emotion and we are getting angry. Really taking the pause and say, could we just take a break for 10 minutes?
Yeah.
Come back, let me take a break. I really want to talk from a different space than I'm getting into, and just take a break.
Yeah.
So sounds like we are gonna take a break now before our next episode.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Lucie.
Thank you so much, Chris. I look forward to our next episode. Next time will be interview, so stay tuned.
Yeah. So for everybody listening, please like, subscribe, comment, follow, email us, call us, do anything, but please
ask us questions.
Ask us questions. We'd love for you to stay connected with us. So say our names, stay connected with us so that we know who you are and we can help make this podcast for you. But otherwise, we will see you all next week.
Bye all. Week.